There are big differences between Germany and the USA that everybody already knows that can sometimes be a little controversial, like using AC versus sweating it out all summer, or what we call football. But are there smaller, more subtle differences that slip under the radar but affect your everyday life? Yes, that's why we're making this video.
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. This is my wife Aubrey and I am Donnie, and we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our experiences and travels throughout Germany and Europe here on this channel. Everybody who travels through Germany and the US will of course notice big differences between the two countries, like the one every American marvels over when they move here to Germany. Yes, of course, things like the magical tilting and swinging windows. But today, we are wanting to talk about differences that are so small and seemingly insignificant that you probably could even live here and go without noticing them, but we still find fascinating that Germans and Americans even have these differences. And that is what we're presenting in our video. Have you noticed these differences between the US and Germany?
Now, before we jump right into it, a couple of very short disclaimers we like to make before this type of video. One, we come from the southern United States and now live in southwest Germany, so these differences may be more specific to these regions, but having a title to a video that is differences between Oklahoma and Rhineland Falls just doesn't get the clicks. And two, some of these differences are just simply that. Differences. There isn't always a right or wrong or a better or worse way of doing things, but we're just presenting these as a way of looking at things from a slightly different perspective and things that still sometimes achieve the same end goal. And with that, our first subtle difference.
Driving on the Autobahn, aka the highways in Germany, will present you with a very unique experience from most of the US because there's an obvious lack of billboards. In the US, as you drive around, most of the time you are bombarded with massive billboards, one right after another, and I mean literally right after another, for hundreds of miles all along the highway and even in remote corners of the country. But in Germany, you won't really find any. It is actually quite nice being able to drive along the highway and have a clear, unobstructed view of the horizon and the scenery all around. You will every once in a while see what looks like a billboard along the highway, but they are signs just telling you to keep off your phone, leave a lane up the middle during traffic for emergency vehicles, etc. Not huge advertisements, but instead more like public service announcements.
This does change in the cities where billboard signs hang along the road announcing events happening in the city or advertisements hanging off of buildings. But even these can be controversial, and some groups exist in Germany to petition the government to remove advertising from public spaces. I do have to mention that there are 4 states in the US that have banned billboards from their state, and those are Vermont, Alaska, Hawaii, and Maine. Other than that, you will find billboards when you're driving in all of the other 46 states.
Along highways in the US, it is also typical to find large signs for restaurants all along the way. These typically are massive chain restaurants that you can find all across the country, and these are going to be your IHOPs, McDonald's, Red Lobsters, Applebee's, Chili's, Subways, PF Chang's, Chipotle's, etc., just to name a few of the couple of hundreds or thousands of chains. Overall, restaurant chains are huge in the US, and you can find these chains nearly anywhere you go. To put this into perspective, Subway has the most US locations than any other restaurant in the US at nearly 25 1,000 locations. But it isn't just fast food. Many sit-down restaurants are chains as well and are some of the most popular places to eat. Because of the proliferation of chain restaurants in the US, it is super exciting when a friend tells you about a hole-in-the-wall restaurant they found, meaning an exciting and delicious, one-of-a-kind and one-off restaurant. These usually are kind of dives and places that are unassuming, but some people will also use it just to describe a one-off restaurant.
But in Germany, you don't find this kind of chain restaurant culture. Now that is a bit of a hyperbole because there are a few chains like Hans im Glück, Vapiano, Nordsee, and of course the Americans were able to infiltrate the restaurant scene here, and you will find the Golden Arches, Burger King, Pizza Hut, and more. But this is not nearly as big of a thing as it is in the US. Most of the times when you eat out in Germany, you're eating at either a place that is a one-off local restaurant, or you may even be eating at a small regional chain rather than massive national or international chains. An example of what I mean could be a very popular bakery slash coffee shop in our region called Barbarossa. They can be found all over our area, but only in our area. Is this to say that every restaurant will be unique? No, you will find basically the same Döner, Currywurst, Bratwurst, etc. everywhere, but they aren't necessarily owned by these huge chain corporations like in the US.
Now, my first thought was this is due to regulations in the government to try to slow or stop massive chains from growing, but when I tried researching this online, I didn't find that that is necessarily true, and that is partially evident because there are a handful of really large chains that exist. But mostly what I found were forums talking about how Germans as a whole just prefer local restaurants for many reasons, like they tend to be more environmentally friendly, they think they taste better because they know they aren't mass producing somewhere and then shipping it in already prepared. They don't eat out as much as Americans and therefore like when they do for it to be a little bit more special. It honestly just seems like everybody has their own reasons, but again, at the end of the day, you will not find nearly the number of chain restaurants as you do in the US, and the preference is not to eat at chains like in the US.
In Germany, we go on a lot more walks, but one thing that is shockingly missing from our environment as we walk as opposed to when we did in the US are fire hydrants. Now, it's not that there aren't any, but in the US, you have the iconic, usually red, above-ground fire hydrant everywhere. But in Germany, much like the billboards, they are mysteriously missing from view. That's because most fire hydrants are below ground in Germany.
I did look this up online because I was curious if all fire hydrants are underground in Germany, and turns out that's not the case. There are some above ground fire hydrants that do look different from American fire hydrants for the most part, but there are significantly fewer above ground than what we see in the US. In the US, the fire hydrant is this kind of odd object that really goes unnoticed in much of our everyday lives, but it is such a big part culturally. There's the classic image of summertime and kids playing in the fire hydrants that have been opened up in commercials, or dogs peeing on them as they pass. I mean, what do dogs pee on in Germany? But these can be found on what seems like every street corner of a neighborhood in the US, and you will pass by a bunch on a walk, but not in Germany. You will just unknowingly pass right over them.
Another disclaimer that we did not specify at the beginning with the other disclaimers is that we are also aware that not all of these differences are specific to Germany or the US, like this next difference. But this one does vary across the world, even though the International Standard of Organization says that Monday is the first day of the week.
And Germany, of course, loves standardizations, and they follow the international ISO 8601 standard that Monday is the first day of the week, while in the US, of course, Sunday is the first day of the week. Without getting too much in the weeds, let's talk about this issue. First off, this hasn't caused any issue in our personal lives, except when I switched my phone completely over to German, and suddenly my calendar in my phone looks like this rather than this. I simply can no longer look at it and default to the day on the far left being Sunday, and it sometimes throws off my scheduling.
But if I start with the vocabulary used in English and German, Wochenende and weekend, it does seem to make total sense that the day the work week ends are the same in the US and Germany. In both countries, Friday is the last day of the work week, and Germany's Wochenende and the US's weekend begins with Saturday and Sunday being rest days. Based off that alone, it makes total sense that those 2 days are the end of the week, like we say, and Monday would be the start to a new week. So while our work weeks are the same, our calendar weeks start differently.
We have also heard people make the argument that if you base it off of biblical teachings, God had a week of creating and then rested on the seventh day. And in modern Christianity, Sunday is typically the day everybody goes to church and observes the Sabbath, if you will. And that is the seventh day of rest. And Monday would start a new week. But the Sabbath historically and in modern Judaism falls on Saturday, thus being the day of rest, and Sunday starting a new week. The days of the week also don't come from Judeo-Christian names, but classical planets, or as Wikipedia puts it, gods of a pantheon. So there are those influences as well.
Again, without getting into the weeds of it all we're simply pointing out is that in Germany, a new week starts on Monday and their calendars reflect that. And in the US, Sunday is the first day of the week and the calendar reflects that. At the end of the day, both countries rest and work on the same days of the week, so it hasn't seemed to really affect anything day to day for this difference to exist, but maybe there are some complications I'm not aware of besides scheduling conflicts, when I look at my calendar and assume days and dates without actually checking what calendar I am using, like when we were looking for flights.
Speaking of dates and times being a little different, something that is also different is the time of day people drink coffee. In the US, it is very typical to invite someone out for a coffee in the evening to end a meal with a coffee or go to a coffee shop late into the night to study during college. However, in Germany, that isn't typically the case, as most coffee shops will be closed by early to late afternoon.
A quick couple of interesting facts about Germany and coffee though. Germany is the world's third largest coffee market after the US and Brazil, and more surprisingly, more coffee is consumed in Germany than beer, wine, or mineral water. Also, a couple of things we do have in common is that in both countries, there's an extremely strong movement in the younger generations to become coffee snobs. I mean, coffee connoisseurs. Also, both countries have a large population that can't start their mornings without coffee. But from our perspective, the way people socialize around coffee and the time of day is different between Germany and the US besides this morning coffee ritual. It is sometimes typical to meet up in the afternoon for a coffee, but Germany takes it to a different level with an amazing cake and coffee culture in the afternoon. You will find cafes all over the country that in the afternoon sell amazing cakes by the slice and coffee to pair with it that makes for a perfect afternoon out. But after that, it seems that most coffee shops close up shop for the day and we struggle to find coffee in the evenings. In the US, this was a classic pastime for us as we would go to a local coffee shop or Starbucks and meet for a coffee after dinner and hang out and talk for a few hours. In Germany, we haven't really been able to do this, and even sometimes in large cities, we struggle to find coffee shops that are open in the evening. As an example, if you will Google Berlin's best coffee shops and click through the top results, you will struggle to find one open past 6 p.m. at the latest, with many closing even as early as 3 or 4 p.m.
Now for our final and most outrageous subtle difference that doesn't really have any effect on society, but it's just fun and interesting that this difference actually exists. But first, before we get to that, if you enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe buttons and let us know in the comments what subtle and fun differences you have experienced between these two countries. And now for this outrageous difference, and that is the amount of Capri Sun you find everywhere in Germany. Holy cow, guys. In the US, Capri Sun tends to be thought of as a nostalgic drink that you sometimes got in your lunchbox, had as a snack, or would drink at a birthday party when you were 5 or 6 years old in the 90s, and that's pretty much it. I think most Americans our age can also recall the weird Capri Sun commercials with the kids out doing different sports, drink a Capri Sun, and then they would turn into blobs of like liquid mercury or something. But in Germany, man, you find it and see it everywhere. Teens are constantly walking around drinking Capri Suns, and in the grocery stores you find stacks and stacks of them, and shelves are full of these drinks. Even sometimes in bakeries, they'll have water, milk, cola, and Capri Sun as your drink choices.
We did look for consumption data of Capri Sun in the US, versus in Germany, and honestly couldn't find any. So this is just from our observations of its prevalence in society. If I had to come up with a way of describing what I mean, it would be like in the South or in large parts of the US, lots of people go into the fast food chain Sonic and grab some sort of drink during their Sonic happy hour and walk around with it. Just now replace that with Capri Sun and you have Germany. This is just a normal casual drink that people, probably still more younger people, pick up and drink that we see regularly.
This led me to do some research and find out this is a German company, and that must partially explain it. I really had no clue, and I think most Americans would have no clue, that this is a German product that was around in Germany for quite a while longer before it ever even made an appearance in US markets. Capri Sun was invented in Germany in 1969 as Capri Sonne, named after the Italian island of Capri, and then followed by the German word for sun, and it wasn't until 1981 that it made its American debut.
It is just really fun to walk around Germany and see this drink that we, and would imagine many Americans, have kind of locked away as nostalgia, and for us, a drink of the 90s or early 2000s, because that's when we were in elementary school, and seemingly is still alive and well and extremely popular and pervasive in modern German culture. Just to show the nostalgic nature of Capri Sun, there are even American websites that we found that are all about ranking your favorite 90s drinks, or other sites that have it listed as some of the best 90s lunch snack essentials. When we first traveled in Germany, this was something we specifically remember calling home and telling our friends that they aren't going to believe what drink we find everywhere in Germany, and they would also laugh as the memories of our childhoods came flooding back.
Well, that is all we have for you today, guys, and we really do hope you enjoyed this video and hope you hit that like and subscribe button. We will see you in our next video.
Cheers!
Can you guys see the wet spot on my shirt that suddenly appeared between takes? Oh, jeez. Named after the Italian island of Capri? I mean, what? I mean, where do dogs pee in Germany? No. I mean, what do dogs pee on? Okay, I gotta scroll. Okay. I mean, where do dogs... Dang it. I mean, what uses... I bit my cheek and it hurt.
The day of the week ends...
And action.
There's an inside scoop for everybody. I have to hit record and then sprint around the desk and try to get here.